What happens when your stepmother kicks you out of your own father's funeral only to discover 1 week later that he left her absolutely nothing? I'm Alexander James, and last December my father passed away at 68. Patricia, my stepmother, literally had security escort me out of the church. "You're not welcome here," she said, her voice cold as ice in front of 200 mourners. She had no idea what my father had planned. Trust me, the lawyer's office 7 days later became a courtroom drama she'll never forget. Let me back up. I'm 34, and I run a mid-size architecture firm in Chicago. Nothing flashy, but solid. My net worth sits around $8.5 million, built entirely from scratch over the past 12 years. I design commercial buildings, mostly office complexes and retail spaces in the Midwest. My company employs 23 people, and we pulled in $4.2 million in revenue last year. I'm telling you this because what happened next has nothing to do with money I needed and everything to do with a father's love I thought I'd lost. My dad, Magnus James, owned James Construction in Cleveland, Ohio. He started with nothing, a hammer and a pickup truck, in 1982 and built it into one of the most respected construction companies in Ohio. By the time he retired at 65, the company was worth approximately $18 million. He also owned significant real estate, a beautiful home in Shaker Heights worth $2.4 million, investment portfolios, and life insurance policies. Combined, his estate was valued at roughly $32 million. But here's where the story gets complicated. 12 years ago, when I was 22 and fresh out of college, my dad met Patricia Donovan at a charity gala in Cleveland. She was 40, divorced, elegant in that calculated way that should have been a red flag. She worked in event planning, which apparently meant attending expensive parties and networking with wealthy men. My mother had passed away from cancer when I was 16. Dad was lonely. I understood that. What I didn't understand was how quickly Patricia moved in and how systematically she began erasing me from his life. It started small. "Your father and I need alone time, Alexander. You understand." Then it was holidays. "We're doing Thanksgiving, just the two of us this year. Something intimate." By the time they married, 6 months after meeting, I was already becoming a stranger in my father's life. The wedding was small, just 30 people. I wasn't asked to be his best man. I wasn't even asked to give a speech. Over the next 12 years, Patricia perfected the art of separation. She'd schedule their vacations during times she knew I had work commitments. She'd answer his phone and tell callers he was busy, then never relay my messages. When I'd drive 3 hours from Chicago to Cleveland to visit, she'd somehow have plans that required Dad's presence. "Oh, Alexander, we have a couple's dinner tonight. Maybe next time. Call first next time." The cruelest part? She did it all with a smile. In front of others, she played the gracious stepmother. "Alexander is so busy with his own life," she'd say at family gatherings. "We're so proud of him." But behind closed doors, she poisoned every well. I later learned she told my father I was embarrassed by his blue-collar background, that I thought I was better than him now that I have my degree in my white-collar career. None of it was true. My father built his empire with his hands, and I never felt anything but pride. I couldn't change Patricia. I couldn't compete with her manipulation. So I did the only thing I could. I built something that would make my father proud, even if he never saw it up close. I threw myself into my career with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I worked 80-hour weeks in my 20s. I learned every aspect of architecture, from structural engineering to client relations to project management. By 28, I'd saved enough to start James Architecture and Design. The name was deliberate. I wanted to carry my father's name forward, to show him that even from a distance, I was still his son. The first 2 years were brutal. I operated out of a 200-square-foot office in a Chicago suburb, taking any project I could get, small renovations, garage designs, residential additions. But I was good, really good, and slowly the commercial clients started calling. At 31, we landed our first major contract, a $3.2 million office complex in downtown Chicago. At 32, we won a design award from the American Institute of Architects. At 33, I had 23 employees and a reputation for innovative, cost-effective commercial design. I kept hoping Dad would see it, that somehow the news would reach him past Patricia's wall of silence. I tried reaching out. I sent him emails about projects, about awards. Most went unanswered.
On his birthday each year, I'd send a card to his office, not the house. Sometimes he'd call, conversations that lasted maybe 5 minutes before Patricia would somehow need him. "I'm proud of you, son. I have to go." Those 4 words sustained me for months at a time.
On December 3rd, 2024, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was my father's secretary at James Construction. Her voice was shaking. "Alexander, I'm so sorry. Your father had a massive heart attack this morning. He didn't make it. I was in a client meeting when I got the call. I walked out mid-sentence, drove home, threw clothes in a bag, and made the 3-hour drive to Cleveland in 2 hours and 40 minutes. When I arrived at their Shaker Heights home, Patricia was standing in the driveway talking to funeral directors. When she saw me, her face went cold. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Patricia, he was my father." "You haven't been part of his life in years, Alexander. Don't make this about you." I was stunned, frozen. Before I could respond, she turned to the funeral director. "We'll need security at the service. There may be unwanted guests." The funeral was held 4 days later at St. Patrick's Cathedral in downtown Cleveland. I arrived early, wearing my best black suit. I sat in the back, trying to be invisible, just wanting to say goodbye to my dad. The church filled with 200 people, business associates, friends, Patricia's social circle. I recognized some of Dad's old construction crew, men who'd worked with him for 30 years. They nodded at me, confused why I wasn't sitting up front. Halfway through the service, during the eulogy Patricia had written, 2 security guards approached my pew. "Sir, you need to come with us," one whispered. I looked up toward the front. Patricia was staring directly at me, her face expressionless. She had actually done it. She was having me removed from my own father's funeral. I stood up quietly. I didn't make a scene. I didn't want to disrespect my father's memory. But as I walked down the aisle toward the exit, I heard whispers. I saw faces, people who'd known me since I was a child, confused and horrified. One of Dad's oldest friends, a man named Frank, who'd worked with him since 1985, actually stood up. "Magnus would be ashamed," he said loudly to Patricia. She ignored him. Outside, in the December cold, I sat in my car in the parking lot. I didn't cry. I was too numb, too angry, too heartbroken. I'd lost my father twice, first to Patricia's manipulation, now to death, and I hadn't even been allowed to say goodbye. 7 days after the funeral, I received a certified letter at my Chicago office. It was from Harrison and Associates, a law firm in Cleveland. The letter was brief. "You are required to attend the reading of Magnus James's last will and testament on December 14th, 2024 at 2:00 p.m. Your presence is mandatory per the decedent's instructions." I was confused. Why would I need to be there? Patricia had made it abundantly clear I was no longer family. I assumed maybe Dad had left me something small, a token. Maybe his old watch or some personal item. I didn't expect money. Patricia had been his wife for 12 years. Legally, she'd inherit everything. I drove to Cleveland on December 14th. The law office was in a downtown high-rise, 42nd floor. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Erie. Patricia was already there, sitting at the head of a long mahogany table. She was wearing a black designer dress, probably $3,000, and she looked confident, comfortable. She glanced at me when I walked in, but said nothing. David Harrison, the attorney, was in his mid-50s, gray hair, sharp navy suit. He'd been my father's lawyer for over 20 years. He greeted me warmly, shook my hand. "Alexander, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father spoke of you often." Patricia's expression flickered at that, just for a second. "Let's begin," Harrison said, sitting down and opening a leather folder. "Magnus James's last will and testament, revised and executed on October 8th, 2024. That was less than 2 months before Dad died. Patricia shifted in her chair, confident. I just sat there, numb. Harrison began reading the legal language, the whereases and herebys. Then he got to the distribution of assets. "To my wife, Patricia Donovan James, I leave the sum of $50,000 and the right to reside in the marital home for a period of 6 months following my death. after which time the property will transfer to my son." The room went silent. Patricia's face went pale. $50,000? She said, her voice rising. "That's impossible. I'm his wife. We've been married for 12 years. Harrison continued, his voice steady. "The remainder of my estate, including James Construction, all real estate holdings, investment portfolios, life insurance policies, and personal property, I leave in its entirety to my son, Alexander Magnus James." I couldn't process what I was hearing. Patricia stood up so fast her chair flew backwards. "This is fraud. He was manipulated. I'll contest this." Harrison remained calm. "Mrs. James, I can assure you, this will was executed with full legal compliance. Your husband was of sound mind, underwent a psychiatric evaluation at his request to confirm capacity, and the document was witnessed by 3 independent parties. He anticipated a challenge." He turned to me. "Alexander, your father left you a letter. He asked that I read it aloud now." Harrison pulled out a single piece of paper, my father's handwriting. His voice softened as he read. "Alex, if you're hearing this, I'm gone, and I hope you can forgive me. Patricia came into my life when I was lonely and vulnerable, and she spent 12 years separating me from the person I love most in this world, you. I was weak. I was a coward. I let her convince me you were ashamed of me, that you had moved on. But I never believed it. Not really. I watched your career from a distance. I saw every article about James architecture. I kept every newspaper clipping about your awards. I knew you named your company after me. And son, it meant everything. I'm not a perfect man. I failed you when you needed me most. But I'm making this right the only way I know how. The business I built, the wealth I accumulated, it was always meant for you. You are my legacy. You are my son. Patricia gets what she deserves, exactly what she brought into this marriage, which was nothing but lies. Build something good with this, Alex. Make me proud. You always have. Love. Dad."
I couldn't speak. Tears were running down my face, and I didn't care who saw them. My father had known. The whole time he'd known. Patricia was screaming now, threatening lawsuits, demanding copies of psychiatric evaluations. Harrison handed her a folder. "Everything is in order, Mrs. James. You have 6 months in the residence. I suggest you use that time wisely." She turned to me, her face twisted with rage. "You poisoned him against me. You manipulated a dying man." I finally found my voice. "I haven't spoken to my father more than 5 minutes in 12 years, Patricia. You made sure of that. He figured you out all on his own." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Harrison and I sat in silence for a long moment. Then he smiled, just slightly. "Your father was a smart man, Alexander. He knew exactly what he was doing. And for what it's worth, I think he'd be incredibly proud of what you've built on your own." Patricia did challenge the will. She hired 3 different law firms over the next 6 months. Every single court filing was denied. The psychiatric evaluation was airtight. The witnesses were impeccable. She'd signed a prenuptial agreement before the marriage that she'd apparently forgotten about, one that specifically stated she'd only receive her personal property and a maximum of $50,000 in the event of divorce or death. When the 6 months ended, I had to forcibly evict her. She'd refused to leave the house, claiming squatter's rights, emotional distress, anything she could think of. On June 15, 2025, sheriff's deputies removed her from the property. She took nothing but her personal belongings. I watched from across the street as she loaded designer clothes into a rented U-Haul, screaming at anyone who came near her.
"I sold my father's house. I couldn't live there, not with those memories. It sold for $2.6 million, slightly above the appraised value. I kept James Construction running exactly as my father had built it. I hired a fantastic operations manager, a man named Frank, who'd worked with Dad for 38 years. The company continues to thrive, generating about $6.8 million annually in revenue. I merged some of the operations with my architecture firm, creating a design-build model. James Architecture and Design now offers both architectural services and construction management.
It's what my father and I could have built together if Patricia hadn't interfered. In a way, we're building it now, just across time. The $32 million inheritance changed my life, but not in the way Patricia probably thinks. I didn't buy a mansion or a yacht. I didn't retire at 34. Instead, I established the Magnus James Scholarship Fund at Ohio State University, my father's alma mater. It provides full-ride scholarships to working-class kids studying construction management or architecture. 20 students are currently enrolled on full scholarships. My father would have loved that. I think about him every day. I visit his grave every month, a simple headstone in a Cleveland cemetery. Magnus James, 1956, 2024. Builder, father, loved. I talk to him sometimes, tell him about projects, about the scholarship recipients. I think he hears me. As for Patricia, I heard she moved to Florida, living off that $50,000 and whatever she'd managed to save during the marriage. I don't think about her much anymore. She was a chapter in my father's life, a painful one, but ultimately a temporary one. His final act was to close that chapter and reopen ours. So here's my question for you. Have you ever lost someone? Not to death, but to someone else's manipulation. Have you ever wondered if they knew the truth, if they saw through the lies? My father did, and his final gift wasn't the money. It was knowing that he never stopped being my dad. I'm Alexander James, and this has been my story. If this resonated with you, if it made you think about the people you've lost or the relationships that were stolen from you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Your stories matter. If this story struck a chord, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people who might need to hear this message. And if you're new here, welcome to Hidden Hearth, where we explore stories about love over money, truth over manipulation, and family over everything else. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest stories. Until next time, remember, the people who truly love you will always find a way back, even if it takes a lifetime. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.